Good morning. This week in church is the last Sunday of the church's year before we move into Advent and preparation for Christmas. It's called Reign of Christ Sunday, traditionally Christ the King Sunday. And all that language of kingship and kings and queens and monarchies doesn't do much for me. They're not part of my daily life or experience. For me, it's about the reign of God, the party of God, the community of God, the economy of God, or the dream of God, the dream that God has for this world and its creatures and people. A world grounded in justice and love and peace and inclusion, where everyone has a place and enough and is cared for. A dream that turns the world as we know it, the systems and the powers and principalities upside down and on their head. So let me tell you a story. It comes from Tex Sample, a Methodist minister in the US. A great storyteller who tells stories with wisdom and depth that are profound. This is a personal story about his son Stephen. Stephen was a bright kid, beautiful, vital, filled with life. He was eager to get on with life. And one day, when he was 4 or 5, he ran away from home one afternoon, and his mother scoured the neighbourhood and finally found him sitting on a fence looking out over the school. And when she coaxed him down, he said, no, I want to go there now, I want to go there now, I want to go. And she said, well, you can't, and finally got him down and got him home. He was looking forward to starting school, but school didn't turn out to be what he dreamed and hoped for. He had trouble with writing and reading and numbers, and too late they realised there was a learning difficulty that had not been dealt with. And school became the source of anger and hatred and bitterness and angst and playing out and rebellious behaviour. And he fell in with a group of people who equally struggled with school or had problems that they brought from their homes and wider life. People who were angry and rebellious. And he got into fast cars and even without a license, and motorbikes and drugs and alcohol. And for 15 years of his life, it was this blur of drugs and alcohol, of bikes, of accidents, of being in and out of hospital, of going to prison once, of trouble with the police, of fights and bruises and bust-ups, and his family at home living through this, particularly the deep nights where they're wondering whether tonight they'd get another phone call. Stephen's in trouble, he's down the police station, he's in hospital, or maybe from the morgue. It was 15 years that Tex describes as desperate and difficult and painful for he and his family and for Stephen. But he also knows that the lives of his friends are equally messed up and messing other people up. When he was late 20s, he met this woman Nancy, who was also a fellow drug taker. And they got on well and developed a relationship. This was after a failed marriage and several relationship breakdowns. This looked good, promising. Nancy decided she'd had enough with this lifestyle, and she got herself into rehab and got herself off drugs and alcohol, got clean. And when she came out, Stephen said, this is not going to work. You are now clean and you want that clean life, and I'm on drugs and alcohol still and in this scene with motorbikes and whatever else. It's not going to work. But Nancy wanted to pursue this, and she hung in there. And she encouraged him and finally got him into rehab. And he went through the weeks of detox and withdrawal symptoms and all the rest of it. He had help around him. There was AA meetings and counsellors, and recognising he needed this higher power that his family knew, his father a minister and being involved in the church. And through this, his counsellor said to him one day, Stephen, you're doing really well, but you realise you need a new playpen and a new set of playmates. You can't go back to your old ways, you can't go back to the old group, because you're just going to go straight back down. I've seen it too many times. And Stephen said, well, what am I going to do? You know I like bikes and riding, and that's the scene. People who ride bikes, drink and take drugs. How am I going to do that? And she said, well, look, let me put you in touch with another group called Vision Motorcycles Club. It's a group of people that are just like you. They've been through that scene, they've come through this rehab, they've got their lives clean and straight, and they want to live straight. They want to live clean, but they want to ride their motorbikes. So she put him in touch, and he was on probation there. They wanted to test him out to make sure he's fair income and he was going to not create havoc within the group. And he joined it. And this group of people became a family around him, a community. This group of ordinary people who had been to hell and back, who struggled with life and lived each day as a new day. Living in the moment and recognising the beauty of this day and what they had. And Stephen was part of that. And Nancy was too. And on weekends they'd meet and they'd go out for their rides. And it was great. And they'd support each other and care for each other and hold each other up. And when people were struggling, they were there and supportive. Anyway, one day they were out for a ride. It was a beautiful day. It had been a great ride, and they're on their way back, and the sun was just setting. They came to an intersection. Stephen and Nancy on their bike came to an intersection, and a truck was coming. And he slowed down to stop and looked. Stephen went out, and the truck kept going and got him. The driver was looking directly into the sun. He couldn't see a bike. All he could see was the sun. He looked and he looked, but there was nothing there. The witnesses say that Stephen turned his bike so Nancy would be saved, but he himself went under the truck and was killed. And that opened up a whole new time of grief and pain. These last 9 months were the best 9 months of Stephen's life. It was wonderful. He was really making something of himself. He had a job, they were planning to marry. He was involved with the Vision's Motorcycle Club and reaching out to people like himself who needed help and support and a hand up and all the rest of it. Life was great. And now he was dead. The family had him back, the real Steve, and now they'd lost him. And Tex says his faculty around him were fantastic. The church they were part of were beautiful people who held them and cared for them. But what surprised him most was the Vision's Motorcycle Club, who gathered around, who called in, people dropped in night and day, who dropped things in, who came to talk and to share stories and to offer thoughts and prayers and love. This strange collection of people brought together by their own desperate lives and their desire to be clean and good people. It was a wonderful experience. And then in the funeral and the wake, this group of people gathered in the church, in the chapel where Tex taught, in the school of theology he taught at. And there was the family, there was the Vision's Motorcycle Club, there were faculty and church friends and other friends, and Stephen's friends, from current friends and past friends. And there was this strange group of people, PhDs and professors, high school dropouts, middle class people in their suits and ties, and people who were broken by life in their t-shirts and torn jeans and tattoos and messy hair, who were struggling with drugs and alcohol. There were people who were all different cultures and backgrounds and belief systems and faiths and no faith. They were all gathered. This disparate, strange, diverse group of people were there, and they were celebrating the life of this one who brought them all together. And Tex said as he was there and in this experience of grief and despair, he felt this presence of God that was in this group of people. He felt himself being held up in their love and support, and this love of God that was mysteriously available and present in this group of people. They shared stories of Stephen. They didn't try and sugarcoat anything. It was the real stories, the struggles, the despair, the chaos, the mess, and the beauty and the wonder. They shared the stories of him finding new life and love and hope, of reaching out to the higher power that held him, of a community around him that sustained him and that was part of this group now. And at the end of the service, the Visions Motorcycle Club had asked could they lead in the Lord's Prayer, which is part of their meetings. They stood and they all held one another, this strange community of people brought together in the presence of God, and they held each other and they prayed the Lord's Prayer. And at the end of it, they yelled out, "Let's go out there," which is what they always did. And the wake, they shared stories and life, and people came and said all sorts of things, and there was all sorts of love and blessing. The last hymn in the service was Amazing Grace. Text sample says that this song lifted him up and held him, and he knew in that moment grace. And people spoke of grace and of love. This week, as part of this Reign of Christ Sunday, we'll read a strange story of Jesus on the cross. He's on the cross and he's got a sign, King of the Jews, a political statement by Pontius Pilate. But he's mocked by the Roman soldiers who have arrested him and hung him on the cross. You know, if you're really the King of the Jews, come down and save us. Save yourself, save us. Prove it. The religious leaders who initiated this arrest, they mock him and abuse him, and one of the convicts, criminals, he's a criminal now. He's a criminal treated as a common criminal. This criminal next to him says, "If you really are King of the Jews, save yourself and save us." Who are you? And the other one says, "Mate, shut up. You know, we're here because we deserve it." He's innocent. Jesus, when you come into your kingdom, remember me. And Jesus says, tonight, you'll be with me. We'll be together in this heart of God, I guess. The profound bit, though, is not just holding this person, of enduring this pain and suffering and mockery. But as he's dying, he says, "Father, God, forgive them. Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." That's what the reign of God's about. It's about forgiveness, reconciliation. It's about recognizing that the powers of this world, no matter how strong they are or what they can do, can never destroy us. They might take our life, but God will hold us in the deepest way. Love will never let us go. We are never alone. And I think that's what Tex was saying in the story of the death of his son. That God would hold him in this mystery of life beyond. But God was holding them in the grief and the pain of life now. And the reign of God is seen in this cross, in the vulnerability and humility of the cross. That God does not assume a powerful posture of domination, of violence, of strength, but one of vulnerability. We see the revelation of God in this Jesus, born in a baby in a far off town to nobody people, in a world of powers and might and wealth and whatever. And Jesus lives amongst ordinary people, shining this light of Christ, this light of God, revealed in him, inviting everyone into this way. Whatever you believe and think and do and say, you are loved by God. And nothing you can do or think or say or believe or not say or not do can stop God loving you or make God love you more. And God invites us into this awareness, this deeper awareness and experience of life. The life that Stephen had in that last 9 months that he grew into. The life of the world, of seeing its beauty and sharing it. The life of justice and peace, of acting for justice in the way of love towards other people, of sharing what we have and being inclusive so that everyone is included, involved, whatever they think and whoever they are. Just as we have been welcomed in and invited into the family of God. Text says in that space, this diverse community was a beloved community, and God was present. And God lifted us and held us. And that is the reign of God. Amen.